You look at the founding of HBCUs that quickly come about that say, if you as a Black woman learn these certain skills so you can both go out in the world and work, but be a homemaker and raise the children, you will make yourself desirable for the right kind of man to come take care of you. That you should not be dealing with men who drink. You should not be dealing with men who are down at the saloon. You should not be dealing with shiftless ass Negroes. And the colorism. You should not be dealing with niggas that are African. Whoever came up with this idea that Black women have ever been encouraged to date dusties and to date down. I wanted to talk about how the heterosexuals are not doing okay. Now we're going to listen to some of the recent discourse around submission. And what I find interesting around the very recent discourse is that it constantly centers this idea of this hyperfixation of submission from the woman to her husband. But it rarely focuses on what the man's role is in the supposed mode of Christian-like submission to one's husband. And more so, it frames the duty of filling in the gaps in the relationship on the woman. And if you are a person who dates cisgendered men, I think one thing you will understand is that in the current iteration, especially for the Negroes, aging ain't on their side. And I think it's so fascinating for this constant conversation around submission to equate to how often you have sex with your husband, as though women lose their sexual appetites as they age. Knock, knock, knock. It's actually the other way around. Now, yes, women are childbearers. I'm not going to be ableist and say that we all, our libido creases with age across the board. People's libidos ebb and flow. But I think this idea that a woman's libido is the one that is going to significantly decrease during a marriage and not the husband's. Anybody who is in a relationship with a man will tell you, baby, that is so far from the truth. It's ridiculous. It is wild, this hyperfixation on the woman filling in the gap. So let's listen to Dana Chanel, who is the original, she used to have sprinkles for Jesus, scamming the peoples. Scammery is her name. And now she got a light eye baby daddy. And she is doing a podcast. I want you to pay attention to the podcast, to this video, because the thing is, she's not talking to anybody else. There is nobody else in the room as she has this conversation. But this is how good of an actress she is.
Never use sex as a weapon against your husband. And have sex often is probably some of the most extraordinary advice I never got. As a working mom, we get tired, exhausted, overwhelmed. But it is dangerous to neglect our husband's needs. And I'll explain to you why. Sex is such a huge part of a man's identity. It's the way he emotionally bonds with us. And it's crazy because God wired his body this way. When a man experiences an orgasm, his body releases the bonding hormone, oxytocin, in such extraordinary amounts. Women experience it as well, but men do 400% times more. And so that skin-to-skin contact mixed with an orgasm creates deep connection. And I never just want to be a great mom. I never just want to be killing it in the workplace. But I desired for my husband to find me to be a good lover. Look forward to coming home to me. And through difficult conversations, because I was never taught this kind of stuff, I had to learn how to not look at sex as a chore or another responsibility on my to-do list, but enjoy my husband feeling respected and honored and wanted. Imagine if one day our husband came home and said, I don't feel like having sex with you. We would be massively offended and hurt. And so men need sex. It's how they came from the factory.
The fact that she ends that on it's how they came from the factory, while also not actually speaking to, like, there's nobody else in the room, babes. You are like acting like you are illuminating the masses and you're just talking to yourself. Oh, okay. The heterosexuals are not all right. Again, like this idea that we are supposed to as women being the ones that fill in the gap. And then if our husbands ever came home or our partners ever came home and said, I don't feel like having sex, who's offended? This idea that like people should be having sex, whatever number you have in your head within a week, that is literally not how life functions. And then I would also want to know, what do people define as sex? What do you count as sexual intercourse? Because there is no way that people are having penetrative sex 4, 5, 6 times a week on a consistently regular basis. Sex is very emotionally taxing, and so many other things come into the room when you are talking about the way that a couple who is married and is spending the bulk of their day-to-day life together. And it's not only women who carry in all this emotional baggage into the bedroom. Niggas do it too. And I really hate how this conversation is so framed on the idea that I, as a woman, have to cater to my husband's sexual needs, when men are much more likely to have a decrease in their sexual prowess with age, with stress, with, I don't know, their diets, their lifestyle habits. Women are not the only ones that go out in the world and are disappointed or stressed about the way life is going. Men experience it too, and it's such a weird conversation to suggest that, you know, sex and the hormonal release that comes with sex is so much more beneficial for the man. And so you should just do it out of service. Now let's get into Keita Rose, who as another one.
You could be in a depression. Something tragic can happen to you. Your money may not be right, and then you just really just not in the mood to have that intimacy. You just don't want to have sex. If I'm not in the mood because something happened to me, maybe I lost my job, something happened to me, and I'm just not. I'm not in the mood. I could go a week, but longer than that, I have to respect my man too. Like, come on, he and I didn't know that until recently. Because before it'd be like, I don't feel like it, so no. I'm not gonna do it, so no. No, it's compromise. I mean, again, it may not be the best, but I'll hand you some.
But here it is.
Yes.
So you would have to try to get yourself in the mood beforehand? Like
yes. You have to get yourself in the mood. You have to, I then looked at porn, I didn't try to, because again, you're just not into it, and they can feel that.
Yeah.
You know, men like, oh, I just want, but it's not, it's the experience. If I just lay down and I don't make any noises, you'll hate it.
Nobody wants sympathy sex. I'm gonna tell you, nobody wants sex that people have to be guilted into doing with you. And honestly, if there is an issue in your relationship and your spouse or your partner understands that something is going on, you haven't been feeling sexual, honestly, it's not on you to be like, okay, I'm gonna watch porn to get on the mood. I don't know why your significant other can't suggest, maybe to fill in the gaps of the lack of sexual activity, would you be comfortable watching porn with me? Let's have, like, that could be an intimate experience together without it being this idea that I have to get over very quickly whatever it is I'm dealing with and immediately be ready to have sex. Also, like, why is this idea that men cannot go periods without having sex? Are you willing to have children with these men? I honestly think that, like, the podcast circuit is not just a problem for men. So many people think they are having profound conversations because they are in a circle jerk of shallow-minded people who look good on camera and who just like to hear themselves talk. There is no real interrogation of people's politic, of why they think the way they think, of how they are coming to this point, of what does this point really mean for a broader audience of people. It just makes a good soundbite that might go viral on social media, and it goes viral oftentimes because people disagree with it, and outrage is a social currency, and so they're gonna go with it. Because are you really in relationships with men? A lot of these women, I feel like, are in performative relationships with men for Instagram. That Jasmine girl that is dating Cam Newton, they're not really in a relationship. Anybody that watched that Sham Body video knows that Cam is keeping her nice and keep putting her up for a fuck. That's not his significant other. That is not somebody who he's invested in. That is not somebody who he respects as he respects his own body. Y'all are doing things that suggest that you don't even have the basic level of respect in your relationship. And then you get on a public platform and present it as though this is the way that a cis-normative heterosexual relationship should go. I think at this point, everyone should have heard of this. So this couple went viral because Tressie McMillan Cotton shared the story on Twitter. Why would this be the way that you want to tell your story? And what it's giving is it's giving this idea that somebody wants to brand their relationship. I think that what they thought is that this was an opportunity for commodification, that this was an opportunity for them to brand themselves and to get on Black Love television and tell their story. Now, the thing that an article like this does on the internet is that, the hypergamy girls get a hold of it, and the divester girls get a hold of it, and, they take and misappropriate Black feminist language to make their point about how Ms. Wade sold herself short in this relationship, and how this is a clear example of how Black women are encouraged to date Dusties. But there is never been a point in history where Black women have ever been encouraged communally as a societal standard to date down. Before we get to Emancipation Proclamation, if you do any sort of historical research on Black women, you have to go back to early Americas. So if you do Black women in America history, you have to go back to early Americas, and you have to read about slave history. You have to read about the antebellum South history. And one thing that you will find from early Americas through the antebellum period, the making of American slavery, and into emancipation, post-emancipation, and the progressive era, is that Black women are constantly told or informed that their partnering choices, whether it's during slavery and who they have the means to optionally procreate with, which is not really a means, because we know that slavery was made through forced reproduction. And so, the reproduction system of a Black body was considered a commodity, a source of capital. Slave masters or plantation owners would breed via their enslaved people. But if Black women had the opportunity to have children with men off the plantation, that they should pursue that as a means for manumission, particularly in areas that were colonized by the Spanish and the French. So I talk about America, but I'm talking about the Americas. So even for Haitian women, for women in what's now South America and Central America, and the areas that were colonized by the Spanish, the French, and the Portuguese, who, unlike the British, allowed for class definitions based on race and phenotype. And so if you look like an African, you were enslaved. But if you had the phenotype of a mulatto or mixed person, you had a closer chance for land ownership and manumission. And manumission means you find a means to free yourself. Then you get out of the slave era and into emancipation, and the post-emancipation period, societies quickly come about. You look at the founding of HBCUs that quickly come about that say, if you as a Black woman learn these certain skills so you can both go out in the world and work, but be a homemaker and raise the children, you will make yourself desirable for the right kind of man to come take care of you. That you should not be dealing with men who drink. You should not be dealing with men who are down at the saloon. You should not be dealing with shiftless ass Negroes. And the colorism. You should not be dealing with niggas that are African. Because largely, Black people in the United States of America were called African until the 1900s. You want to get away from certain phenotypes of dark niggas. Whoever came up with this idea that Black women have ever been encouraged to date dusties and to date down. There has been, on some level, with the rise of Pentecostal Christianity and the Kojic Church. This didn't really so much come out of the Baptist Church, because the Baptist Church in the South very quickly positioned itself as a model of middle-class Black aesthetics in places like Memphis, right? And so the Kojic Church came about and was more representative, and Pentecostal and the holiness movement was more representative of people that were defined as African, which is basically low-income, poor Black folks, which was the majority of us. And there is some theology that started to come out of that church about being understanding of a good man who's working himself up and not dealing with men who are materialists. But that also is at a time where you have gang activity and crime and organized crime becoming a thing in certain urban centers within the Black community. The church has always been very conservative. So, you know, people that own bars, that are secular pop artists and produce secular music and own different types of houses that might be, you know, dealing with the salacious things, that those are not people that you should date, that you should be partnering with the man who's making an earnest living. But there has never been the suggestion that you as a woman should be dating a man who needs you to mother him. That sort of messaging has never historically existed. That is all I had today on the Heterosexuals Are Not Okay. I think people are performing for the internet because they think there are opportunities for TV, but I think Black Love has ended, so I don't know if they're going to be on that show. I think these conversations are happening because they go viral. I can't fathom, as a grown woman who dates men, that these are the things that you guys are really putting up with in your day-to-day. That in real life, you are hyper-fixated on, has your man got enough pussy this week or not? And that your man is not the one expressing that he's not feeling sexual right now. Or maybe your man ain't truly your man and y'all just ain't even together for real, and that's why you coming up with these stupid ass points. But the heterosexuals are down bad because we're in a period where people are trying to commodify every aspect of their life. And Black love and Black partnership is considered a very profitable point. It's a very profitable branding ideal, and people are feeding into it because it's all about what topics will get them engagement, and then how does that get them put on to other opportunities. And I hate to see it. I really do. I will holler at y'all later. Good night.